recently showed my son the Christmas movie Home Alone. And early on in this movie, when the whole family is in Kevin's house, there's these arguments over where Kevin's going to have to sleep, and that's usually leaning towards him having to sleep with the young boy that has problems with wetting the bed from drinking too much Coke. But the main problem here is that they had to cram all of these family members into tight spaces. And this brought up memories of my own growing up and going to Christmas festivities for my own family, where I'd have to argue with my sister about who was going to sleep where. And then as the family got bigger and we got more cousins, that became more and more of an issue, more arguments. But it seems to me it's a fairly common dilemma around this time of year, a good problem to have sometimes. Families negotiating time and space to cram everyone in. And it would seem it was the same on the first Christmas. What a pesky tradition to have begun so long ago. You see, the emperor had ordered that all the people should be registered in a census, their tax lists, right? And to do so, families had to go back to their places of origin. For Jesus' family, as descendants of David, this meant to return to Bethlehem, where the rest of their family would also be going, and likely staying with those family members who yet lived there, which would have been customary. So as is so often our own experience, all of this family would have been trying to find room in a cramped space. Now, in first century Judea, the bottom floor of a typical or common home would have included space for animals, and the people would have been in spaces on the upper floor or even on the roof. All of this being the case, recent scholarship suggests that the passage in Luke that implies Jesus was born in a stable and has traditionally been translated as there being no room in the inn is more accurately translated, there was no room in the guest room, as he was likely born in a common home, but laid in a manger on the bottom floor where the animals stayed, because there was no room in the upper level. This is remarkable. It's the first great surprise God offers us. Jesus, God among us, enters the world in the common and the ordinary, into the home of a common family, a poor family even, and into the common human experience. In so doing, God finds new ways of relating to us by experiencing life as we do, in an amazing act of solidarity. But it also gives us new ways of relating to God, in that we now can relate to one who is like us, not completely unknowable. A human being revealing much in ways that humanity could now witness and understand. Additionally, through Jesus, God reveals to us the way God would have us be and the way God would order the world, revealing hope for a world renewed, a world of peace overflowing with joy. And the birth of Jesus also reveals love that we had previously not known. Again, we know God's love through the coming of the Christ, and that God desired so much to reach us, so much so that God was willing to enter into our very lived experience, to walk with us. And in the life of Jesus, we're shown how to live as loving creatures. We're shown a love that saves, this love that reaches out to all people, this love that heals, this love that reconciles, and this love of God that binds us to our neighbors in a way that we are truly dependent on one another, a love that builds community that leaves no one out. It's a love that brings wholeness. And all of this revelation, Mary delivered into the world that first Christmas night. All of this revelation entered into the world through this child. And it's amazing and extraordinary news. Yet God chose to reveal it to and through the common and the ordinary. Now, while God was entering into the common experience in a common home in this new baby, in that very region there were other common folk doing their jobs as shepherds, sleeping in fields and tending their flocks. The shepherds, these common working poor folk, become the first witnesses to the good news of the evening. To them, angels appear and tell of this good news of great joy intended for them and for all people. They're the first to know, the first to witness. These lowly and common folk are given special attention from God that they may know this good news and that they might find hope in it, that they might find hope in the knowledge that their Christ, whom they've waited for so long, had arrived. For those of you who might have heard me preach last week, this may sound familiar, but this is the one they were waiting for to save them from the forces that kept them marginalized and prevented their experience of flourishing life. This was the one who would establish equity and justice and inclusion for all, who would transform the world into the realm that God envisioned. And as the angels made their proclamation to the shepherds, they revealed that heaven was now intersecting with earth, the boundary becoming blurred, and never again would the two be fully separate. God had come into our midst to alter the world and our lives forever and begin the transformation that those like the shepherds longed for and which has been ongoing ever since. So yes, tonight we celebrate the first birth of Christ, the initial coming of God into the midst of the common, the ordinary, the lowly, to walk alongside of creation and reveal the path we were always intended to walk. And as we as disciples of Christ walk that path, as we embody the hope, peace, joy, and love that Christ first brought and revealed, Christ is again made manifest in the world. Through the church, through us, and through other ways we may not even imagine. Heaven breaks into and through the common and the ordinary every day, if our eyes are open to seeing it and we're open to receiving it. Essentially every day truly is Christmas all over again as we share the light of Christ with the world, this flame that burns in our hearts and pours out of us to light the waiting wicks of others, waiting to know the hope, peace, joy, and love that comes from God and seeks to light up the night. Thanks be to God that our light has arrived. May Christ fill you. May Christ be born anew in and through you tonight and every day. Merry Christmas. Amen.